All right. And on radio, we're live in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTKA.com. Sam Webb, Matt the Miz Mizler on the other side, and it is time for the MGoBlog Roundtable. I always look forward to the roundtable every single week. I've been looking forward to the opportunity to tell my man, Brian Cook. Man, I love you, brother. I love you. I love what you write. I love how you write. I love your style. I love how you just get right to the point. I love how you say what needs to be said, because you say what needs to be said when it needs to be said. Man, you were laying it down this week, Brian Cook. I said, that's my guy, Brian, right there. That's my guy. Yes, Brian Cook. I just wanted to tell you that. I wanted to tell you that in front of all the people, just so you know. So, welcome. Good morning. How are you? I
can't hear you, Brian.
He's speechless.
Well, you're muted on your thing.
Oh no!
Yep.
I'm well. There we go. I'm
there
good work.
Good
work. There we go. There we go.
There's Brian Cook. There's Brian Cook. Yeah, great stuff. You always write great stuff, but this is like, man, I mean, boy, woo! Brian Cook was bringing the fire this week.
Well, sometimes you gotta. I mean, you've brought it out when it needs to be brought out before, so on the same wavelength.
All right, Craig Ross, how are you this morning?
I'm good. I'd like to say one small thing. I mean, local events have obscured the biggest story of the week, and that is that Pitbull has the naming rights to FIU Stadium. Now, I think maybe he got a little confused because he thought it was Southern Florida, where they're known as the Bulls. So the stadium could be the Bulls or something like that, or the Pit. But what few may realize, and I know Brian knows this, is that Pitbull paid Brian major NIL money to have his name on Brian's banner at MGoBlog for many years. So he's gone from banner ad at MGoBlog to naming rights at Florida International University. Now, I don't know if that's a step up or down. So Brian's going to have to weigh in on his relationship with Pitbull.
So I admit, I mean, and I'm not ashamed to admit that, Craig, sometimes it takes me like a minute to catch up where you're going. Sometimes, like, but I get there. I follow you. I don't always get there quick, but I get there. So I'm with you, Craig Ross.
Okay.
People love story time with Craig. Craig, I told you got a fan club, man. Look at that. See, look.
I pay all these people. So Brian, what is the deal with Pitbull? I mean,
what
he's your
do
boy.
you mean? Well, he just seems like a cool dude. Like, the internet conspired to send him to the Walmart in Alaska, and he just went there and he had a great time. And I was like, man, maybe this guy's like got the secret to life. He's not like upset about anything. He's just like, I'm going to hang out in Alaska. I'm going to do a show for 4 people. It's great. It's like a JD Vance campaign stop.
Ooh.
Speaking of bringing the fire, Brian.
Sorry. It just
Seth
came
Fisher,
out.
how are
It
you
just
this
came
morning?
out.
I'm great, and I am currently trained not to talk about electoral politics because I worked the election again. I was the precinct chairman for the first time. I've been co-chair for a while now, and we need more people. So if you want to, fill yourself up with social pride, I suggest just get in contact with me, and then I'll get you in contact with someone in your local clerk's office. And it's really the best thing. One of the best things I've ever done. It made me feel like Pitbull, Brian.
Yeah, thank you for your service. And listen, that's no small thing these days. That you deserve hazard pay. Seriously,
we got what, 3 weirdos? That was it. That, I mean, in a whole day of people voting, you get 3. It's not a big deal.
Consider yourself. I guess I consider you lucky then. How Hey, I spent the entire week giving people my opinions, both in print on several shows, both locally and nationally, on this whole draft of the notice and what was and was not going to happen, what is and isn't realistic as far as punishment is concerned, what does and doesn't deserve conversation. I've said my piece. I want to go around the round table and give each of you your chance to say your piece before we talk about the NCAA. And there must be some Ohio State, these leaks, like there has to be some Ohio State people inside the NCAA. I'm trying to get to the root of what is their obsession with Michigan at this point, because I thought it was going to be Jim's gone, it's over, but it's not. So it has to be an Ohio State thing. But let your reaction to the leak of the draft, of the notice, and what you think is going to be the outcome of, of all of this in the grand scheme of things, Brian Cook.
Well, I mean, I think the notable thing about the leak is it was immediately followed up by pretty much everyone in media saying that this is stupid and let's move on, including Pete Thamel, who went on McAfee. He went on, I think it's called Get Up, one of ESPN's morning shows, and basically said that a postseason ban isn't going to happen, vacation of records isn't going to happen because that's only something that happens with ineligible players. And outside of that, I honestly do not care. Like, the NCAA can do what they want as long as the national title stands and Michigan isn't punished going forward for something that was vastly overblown. And, you know, the most notable thing from the leak is the fact that there is nothing connecting Connor Stalions to, I mean, there's no evidence that anyone other than Connor Stalions had knowledge of his cockamamie scheme. And the idea that it was a conspiracy that went to the highest levels seems pretty thoroughly debunked by that, because, like, you know, the NCAA has all of Sharon Morris texts with Connor Stalions, and they had to jump through a hoop to get it, but they had it, and I've been told that they'll be released fairly soon, and the contents of them will be innocuous. So, you know, even if this was some sort of like Ohio State conspiracy to like make Michigan look bad, it's kind of like, did it work? It doesn't seem like it worked, like it didn't work last year. So they can keep banging away at this topic, but pretty much everybody other than Michigan State and Ohio State fans is over it and has been over it.
Greg Ross?
Yeah, a couple things. I mean, if you step way back from this, Harbaugh's punishment, such as it is, or non-punishment, doesn't relate to the Connor Stallion stuff. I don't believe so. It relates to the fact that he impermissibly contacted a recruit during a dead period, I think, which he admitted, I believe, and it's trivial. And the other thing relates to buying a recruit and or his family a hamburger, or they got a discounted meal, something like that. Okay. Trying to step way back from that, a Texas school announced this last month that they just bought a softball pitcher for $1 million. And this isn't any secret. This is like public information. The NCAA itself has said, we're not going to enforce, payment to players. We can't sort it out. It's too complicated. We're not going to enforce it. And so what we're stepping back from here is something in the range of a hamburger or a discounted meal. And so that's strange to me, given everything else going on in the landscape. And so what this is their hatred of Harbaugh.
Well, and I think it's useful to like point out that this is the similar punishment to what Jeremy Pruitt got for directly paying players as a head coach.
Right.
Like Harbaugh, thought that the NCAA's enforcement of some petty crap was stupid, right, and was Harbaugh. Right. But this is a penalty that's basically on par with what Pruitt got, which is absurd.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so to me, the only thing I can glean from this is they just hate Harbaugh. And a subtext of this story is the Mars. Apparently, the NCAA sent stuff to Tom Mars. We want you to hand over Harbaugh's emails,
Yeah,
like a lot of them.
yeah.
And so Mars reasonably said, well, there's 6,200 of them, and it's going to take me a little while to go through there because you don't have a right to say notes to Harbaugh's wife or things that would otherwise, be privileged or inappropriate for you to have. But I need to look through them, and anything related to this, yeah, you'll get. And I need 20 days. Completely reasonable in the legal world, incidentally. 20 days is nothing. And so what do they say? No, we need them by tomorrow. And so, and it wasn't like Mars had any lead time on this. All I can gather on this is they just are after, hate Harbaugh, because Harbaugh is not going to knuckle under their nonsense. And then in addition to that, you've got leaks. And the leaks are coming from the NCAA, which is against their own rules. So I think this is why people like Thamel and Feinbaum, aside from other reasons, have probably figured it out. They've probably come to the conclusion that this just makes no sense. And given that it makes no sense, we're sort of turning the corner on that. That and the fact that Feinbaum really likes Sam Webb, and that's made a big difference in his point of view. That's true, isn't it?
I mean, it's not just those guys. You've seen a lot of the people. Anyone who feels like their credibility would be in jeopardy if they blatantly lie to their readership. And Thamel, keep in mind, Thamel actually did put out a report originally that vastly overblew it, and then he walked it back in every single subsequent statement. So he gets the leak and he puts it out that way. You want to find out who the Ohio State person is. They're all the Ohio State people. And I think that we're not giving Ward Manuel enough credit because he's playing the long game by trying to ingratiate himself with the NCAA. Because the way the NCAA got this way in the first place was Gene Smith became their favorite person. And he got to affect who got all these appointments. And he was there for years. And now this is it's like the Gene Smith Supreme Court now. So it's not just Jim Harbaugh they hate. I think they hate Michigan, and they hate Michigan with like the heat of 1,000 suns that Ohio State people hate Michigan with. And if they were actually just, because for a long time I thought they were just that kind of petty person who thinks they're important, and the more they find out they're not important, the more they try to prove they're important. So now they're mad that Jim Harbaugh won't give him his personal cell phone, only his work cell phone. Well, no one thinks that you should hand over your personal cell phone. They have no right to that whatsoever. But when they start getting to that level, and then they throw this, 4-year show cause, the same thing they gave Pruitt, which they know is unenforceable, right? They know that he's going to be in the NFL for the next 4 or 5 years anyway. So they know there's nothing they can do. It's a show. If they want to demonstrate that they are important people, and they've got this quixotic hatred of Michigan, and that's why you have Sharon Moore. They're going to get every single thing they can on Sharon, and the fact that Michigan has withstood that kind of scrutiny as well as they have, because what other school possibly could have withstood these two investigations with this kind of attitude? Now that you see how they really function, what other school could have withstood that?
So I guess,
And just a footnote to this real quick. A number of years ago, I came up with the Trotsky thing, and that has proven really to be true. I mean, we are Trotsky, and they're going to try, and Stalin's going to ice axe us in the head, especially when we're successful.
But they can't. This is all. Don't you see?
They're going to try.
This is my point. This is all they can do. Mm-hmm. And if this is all they exist to do, then Ward is smart. Get himself in there for a while, and then make a couple appointees and start changing the makeup of this board, because they really don't matter. But except for they can create news and they can create annoyances.
So I guess I've kind of a long time ago reconciled how you win with some minor fracturing of the rules. All right. I mean, there are things that coaches do in every program that fall outside of the lines that I have no moral quarrel with, like letting your analyst coach, which
Saban's been doing that since LSU.
Like, come on, man, come on. That's why when it came out that Michigan, and when I was one of the things, I said, listen, Michigan is guilty of this. Take the punishment and keep it moving. And so I don't care if he lied. He says he doesn't remember. I buy it. But even if he lied about, I don't care. I don't care. It does not matter. Every coach has analysts who coached. Just like every coach contacted players during COVID. Every freaking one of them contacted players during COVID. Doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. There are worse crimes that were committed. I'm not saying don't punish them. I'm just saying the punishment should be commensurate with the crime. It should be an appropriate level of punishment. Just like, hey, if I do 55 and a 45, then punish me appropriately. Don't send me to prison. That's all I'm saying. And so that's how I think Michigan fans should react. Don't just, oh my God, I can't believe he lied. Like I can't believe there are some Michigan fans that'll react. Not all, but I see some even in the chat kind of acting like, he lied. I can't, it makes Michigan look bad. No, it does.
Sam, this is why you have to work elections. If you're online or you're just getting radio callers, you are getting just the weirdos, right? The 3 weirdos out of the 300 people who come into the precinct for the whole day. Most people are just filing through and going, okay, whatever, NCAA. You're focusing on the weirdos, and the weirdos really don't matter.
Seth, he does work for me. He works. I'm weirdo.
Oh man.
Well, I also what are the chances that the NCAA actually levies this penalty against Harbaugh if he's still coaching Michigan? There's 0%.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, this is a completely symbolic punishment that lets the NCAA look like they're waving a big stick around, but everybody sees through it. And I think it's a preview of what's going to be, it's a fine and some recruiting restrictions or whatever for sign gate stuff that's going to have everybody up in arms because, they're not going to take away the national championship. They're not going to ban Michigan in the postseason. And so everybody's going to be like, they didn't do anything. And then the NCAA is like, well, we banned Jim Harbaugh, who already left. And everybody's going to be like, that's stupid. And we're going to be like, what are they going to say? They're going to be like, yeah.
So quick question, because I want to get to the guys. I know you guys last week or the week before wanted to kind of get to some hockey recruiting, and there was some hockey recruiting news to kind of jump on here. So I want to get to that.
Well, yeah. So the window for 2008 birth years mostly opened August 1st.
Well, real quick, I got a question I want to ask you guys to close this out.
Yeah.
Is there recourse? Is there recourse when there is a violation of policy and procedure? Because there is on the school side of things, when the school and there's an ongoing investigation and the school violates, when there's no fidelity to the process, you're not supposed to comment on an ongoing investigation. School can be held accountable for that. When there is incessant leaking on the NCAA side, is there a method of holding it accountable, holding the body accountable?
So no. I asked someone who knows the procedure stuff pretty well. The NCAA would have to initiate that. Now the NCAA is
against itself.
The NCAA is aware of these leaks, so when they have proof that the leak has occurred, then they usually would start an investigation, but they would have to initiate that investigation, and it would be entirely up to them. So I'm not holding my breath, Sam.
You're kidding me. That's a joke.
I mean,
Well, go ahead,
like,
Brian.
just what's the enforcement model there? Like, you can sue the NCAA because somebody who you don't know leaked something to the press. Like, if that was the case, then whistleblowers all over the country would have. I mean, it's just not important enough for the legal framework of the United States to like want to dissuade people from coming forward about Boeing planes falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So
this is
it's
not a
just-
legal thing at all. It's an NCAA is not the law. I mean, people need reminders of that. The NCAA is not the law, does not function like the law. If they were the law, they could not force Jim Harbaugh to testify against himself, right? This is a system that's set up for presidents to control their football programs. That's the system that they created. Now, that system has not been functional for 50 years at least, but that's the system that they have. And the presidents don't expect the NCAA because that's themselves, right? That's their own people. So it's set up to under the understanding that, hey, we're the good guys, the coaches are the bad guys. Let's go and make sure together we're going to control these football crazies so we can have an educational system with our football teams.
You know, it wouldn't make me upset if, say, some random attorney who might do it for free and pull out another random attorney who has experience in these matters, file a federal case against the NCAA asking for $100 million in damages. Could that be done? Oh, yeah.
What damages?
It's a waste of time.
Oh, it might be.
If you're Jim Harbaugh, what are your damages right now? Because you're not making a cent less than you would be.
It wouldn't be against Harbaugh. I mean, Harbaugh wouldn't be the plaintiff. Plaintiff would be the University of Michigan.
Okay, what damages are the University of Michigan?
And the University of Michigan is an important worldwide institution.
Yeah.
And this is and these leaks
are causing people like, you know, Paul Feinbaum to dismiss them like publicly.
I mean, it takes them seriously. Now you're saying we shouldn't take the NCAA seriously.
No.
I'm saying take them seriously. I mean, this is what Tennessee.
That's the whole point.
This is not how this is supposed to go, Craig.
There are damages.
Craig, I'm the one who's supposed to come up with the cockamamie lawsuits, and you, the lawyer, are supposed to dissuade us with reason and law talking speak. And this is the opposite of how this is supposed to go.
Well, I think I'm not saying that Michigan should do that. I'm saying they could.
Yes, you are. You just said that.
I said they could do it. They could do it, and it might dissuade the NCAA from acting like the boneheads they've been.
I mean, if the NCAA, like at this point, the NCAA is solely comprised of people who have a fetish for being sued. So,
and losing those lawsuits, incidentally, because I don't think they've won one. And you know, and I think
but it's not a full-time job. The investigative committee is not a full-time job, and whenever they have investigators, they lose them a month later to somebody's internal program, right? Like they all go work for North Carolina a week after being at the NCAA because no one wants to stay there. So once in a while you get somebody who just really has a bug up their butt and they really want to get you. And usually those kinds of people, because you get these people when you work in elections too, by the way, you will find a couple people who are there because they want the power of being in charge of something. And there's always, every organization has those kinds of people, and those people are who we're talking about.
All right, well, let's pause for the cause. And my guy Brian has been teasing the big hockey recruiting news. Yeah, for at least I've been teasing big hockey recruiting discussion since last week. So we will bring that on the other side. And this is Craig, you said this is like a huge development in the grand scheme of things, right? I mean, rankings wise, what would this equate to on the football side of things? Are we talking top 10, top 5? What are we talking?
Oh, top 5. You're talking about the 2008
top
kids.
2.
Yeah.
Top 2.
Top 3
Boston College and Michigan are like Georgia and Alabama right now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to get into it on the other side here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTK, the ticket.
Clear on radio.
Sue the mofos. That's what I say.
I know that's what.
All right, so
you're wrong.
And we say so. He said, "Give us a Cliff's Notes version of how the hell."
Good question.
You want to do that in the live, or you want to do that in
No,
the break?
no more cockamamie schemes.
No, this no. They want to
No.
know what
how-
they're ready
how-
to explain
how
how the
does-
hell hockey recruiting works.
Yeah.
Oh God, Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the Cliff's Notes version in the break, because I want to get right into the meat when we get back.
Cliff's Notes is a few years ago. They put a restriction that you couldn't commit until August 1st of your junior year of high school. So most of the 08s aren't eligible until just now. So there's a big wave of commits. But Michigan got a couple before this because I don't know, Canadians just ignore it. I don't know. But
Because our top 2 are Canadians, right?
yes, so they sniped the top 2 guys in the OHL draft, or who would have been the top 2 guys in the OHL draft if they weren't going to go to college, which is nuts. And the thing about this is, like, before, you'd have guys committing and they were just like playing for like they'd commit, and then what they were really doing is they were just trying to get to their preferred destination, the OHL. And now most of the time those guys are committing to colleges after the OHL draft has happened, so they are far less likely to defect. And I think the only person since this rule has come into effect that has defected was Gridin, who is a Russian who was banned from playing OHL hockey in the first place. So a guy who, if things were more normal, would have just gone to the OHL and no one would have bothered with him as a college recruit.
Same as the defenseman that played at
State. Yeah, there's
State last
almost
year.
no chance he would have been in
Right.
college if he was allowed to play in the O.
Right.
So, or I guess.
Yeah, that's changed.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, the interesting thing is the OHL people for Gridden, they were like, "Why don't you go back? You should go to college, man. What are you doing?" But I think he didn't have his Russian school or something like that. He didn't
something like that. Like he
he
didn't have the grades. I mean, it was interesting. Yeah, because when this decision was going down, he was drafted by the Flames, and Flames fans were like, "Kid, go to Michigan. Like that's the place you should go," which is wild because 20 years ago, you couldn't find a Canadian on the planet who would have said anything other than college hockey is a joke. And now you have just sort of rank and file fans being like, "Yeah, you should go to Michigan, kid." So
yeah, I mean, Michigan kind of is the Alabama of hockey right now. That they, you look at the NHL and like there's all these young players who are playing really well in the NHL, and they're like, "Where'd those guys come from?"
When did that change? Because I mean that's different now, right?
I mean, it is different. By degree, like Michigan has always put a lot of guys in the league, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was that kind of late red lull, but other than that, they've been doing this for 20 years. But now it's like you're getting top liners and Norris winning defensemen playing at Michigan instead of guys who have like solid careers, like a Cogliano, who was in the league for forever but was never really a star. But now you have some of the best players in the NHL who are Michigan alums, and that's not just Michigan. Like BU had the top pick in the draft this year. Like there's really like 4 Alabamas. It's the 2 Boston schools, it's Michigan, and it's Minnesota. And and Minnesota might be lagging a little bit just in terms of talent, but they do so well at retaining it because they have a lot of local kids who just wanted to play for Minnesota their whole lives. So, but there is kind of a vibe shift in terms of like what Canadian players are doing. And it's not everybody, of course, but like Caleb Malhotra, who's Manny Malhotra's kid, just committed to BU. He was the number 4 player in preseason ranking, pre-draft rankings for the OHL draft. So 3 of the top 4 OHL draft prospects are going to college, which is nuts.
Yeah, that was the thing that used to not happen because the NCAA wouldn't allow these guys to get paid, and now you can have the options.
That's what's different.
But
I mean,
the big schools always had the NHL guys, and the lower schools in the last 10 years or so have been getting like overagers. They get guys who aren't going to have an NHL career, so it kind of the top is heavier, and also guys like Fantilli just used to go to the OHL. There would be no reason to go to college for him.
I think. Go ahead, Brian.
I mean, I think that I don't necessarily think NIL is that big of a deal because I'm not sure how many of these kids are getting like meaningful dollars. And we'd been operating under the assumption that a lot of guys who go to London or whatever are getting paid under the table. So maybe it's just leveling the playing field there.
That's what it is. I mean, I know hockey parents, and the OHL did not pay a lot. So it's not like they were getting like, $1 million under the table or even, 6 figures under the table. They were getting 15 grand, 20 grand or something like that. And that was what made the decision. But that was a big,
about a minute, guys.
Okay.
that was a big deal. And hockey's an expensive sport all the way up, from Bantam all the way through Little Caesars and all that stuff. That costs a lot of money. And the parents, when you get to that level, and in Canada, it's actually even more expensive than the United States because we have development programs now that you can put your kids into and they'll pay for it. So the development track in Canada is expensive. And by the time you're done with that, you're looking to get your bank refilled, and that was a problem because if you have someone offering you 25 grand right now and someone who's not, and they're giving you a stipend and the other one's not, it was a big deal.
Well, I mean, there's a few things.
Okay. Coming back.
Right.
Back on radio in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back folks, on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTKA online at WTKA.com. Sam Webb, Matt the Ms. Misler on the other side. Before we get back to the MGoBlog Roundtable, I want to tell you about the great deals to be had. If you go to Brighton Ford, if you're in the market for a new vehicle, get on board with Brighton Ford by going to BrightonFord.com. Call 1-800-NEW-FORD to make it out to the lot at 8240 West Grand River Avenue in Brighton, Michigan. That's where John Cuter and his crew will take great care of you. Deals that can't be beaten, deals like the one on the 2024 Ford F-150 XLT. Get into one right now for $259 a month with $3,500 down, or $387 a month with $500 down. Or how about the 2024 Ford Bronco Sport Big Bend, $208 a month with $3,500 down, or $336 a month with $500 down. And last but not least, the 2024 Ford Explorer XLT, $202 a month, $3,500 down, or $327 a month with $500 down. For those and other great deals, get on board with Brighton Ford by going to BrightonFord.com. Call 1-800-NEW-FORD or make it out to the lot at 8240 West Grand River Avenue in Brighton, Michigan. And we are back with the MGoBlog Roundtable. And so, fellas, before we went to the break, I teased hockey recruiting. And from what I hear, not just big hockey recruiting news, huge hockey recruiting news. Brian Cook, you have the floor. So tell us about these huge hockey recruiting developments.
Well, so the OHL draft happens in, I think, June or something, and most hockey recruits who can't commit now until August, which is after the OHL draft. So you get these OHL draft rankings, and then you have the draft itself. So guys who fall are usually ticketed for college, and Michigan now has the 2 top players in pre-draft rankings from the OHL draft, and Adam Valentini and Zachary Nyman, who are Valentini's a center and Nyman is a 5'9" defenseman. And if you know me, 5'9" is the perfect height for a defenseman because it means that they're awesome offensively. Like you bring in a 6'6" guy, I'm like, all right, fine. But you get me hyped up. It's like Eric Werner. But so they have 4 commits in the class now, and they're all Canadians, which is wild.
Cossack is a Canadian? No,
yeah, Cossack's a Canadian. I mean, his dad played here, and he's
tell us all their names. Tell us who they all are.
Noah Cossack, who's a center out of British Columbia. Adam Valentini, who was the #1 overall prospect in the draft, who's a center out of Ontario. Zachary Nyman, another center, he's a defenseman out of also Ontario, and then Alex Haig, who's the younger brother of Michael Haig, who's coming in this year. Another guy who is like a top 15 prospect in the OHL draft. So these guys are all getting all getting drafted in the NHL. Like I'd say Nyman and Valentini are probably like locks to be first-round picks, and then Haig and Cossack are probably mid-rounders. It depends on. I mean, Cossack's a guy who's so explosive and has put up absolutely crazy numbers, but is tiny. He's like listed at 5'6" right now, which I mean, I love that too. But
listen, 5'8", 134.
Right, but that is a problem when it comes to getting drafted by the NHL. As when being a college player, it's like, okay, that's probably a plus because you might have them around for a year longer than you would otherwise. And then you're looking at, okay, who's coming over from the national team, and number one prospect on the national team is JP Hurlburt, who's out of Texas and is already down to Wisconsin and Michigan. And Wisconsin has Minnesota State Mankato's head coach now. And he has always been one of those guys who relies on recruiting 20-year-olds, getting old and staying old. And the NHL draft picks on his roster have sort of fled to other teams. Like Michigan just picked up William Whitelaw from Wisconsin, who was a third-round pick. So it kind of feels like Michigan is likely to get the number one forward from the national team as well. And then Asher Barnett's younger brother, Asher Barnett, is a defensive commit. Abe is also on the NTDP, and I would imagine will commit. So you're looking at Michigan pulling off the top two kids from the OHL draft, the top kid from the national development team, and then filling out the rest of this class with guys who are going to be NHL draft picks. Like this could be, I mean, it's never going to be for the top 5 picks in the NHL draft again. That's never going to happen. But in terms of like what could happen, I feel like this class could be on that level of the Power, Beniers, Hughes, and Kent Johnson class. And the thing about that class you have to remember is that Beniers was going to Harvard, but decided to go to Michigan because Harvard canceled their season. So just in terms of like a recruiting accomplishment, if, you know, these guys do commit and do stick, it's like, you know, Brandon Nerato's getting work done.
Yes, I was about to say, so
Yeah.
Brandon Nerato is that guy on the recruiting trail, is basically what you're telling me.
Yeah. And I know we talked about this in the break somewhat, but this is sort of like a, you know, rising tide lifts all boats for college hockey, because they are really doing much better in terms of retaining American talent and poaching Canadian talent than they ever have been. So there's a bunch of guys who were highly rated OHL draft prospects this year who are headed to college, not just the guys Michigan got. So, you know, in context, yeah, Michigan's doing great, but Boston College is doing great. BU's doing great. So there are multiple teams out there who are just crushing it on the recruiting trail, but Michigan is one of them.
There's a footnote on Zach Nyman. I don't know if any of you saw his interview. He's unreal. He was down to Michigan and Harvard, and that kid is so smart and so articulate. I was completely blown away that this is a 16-year-old kid. If you check it out, look at his interview, and he remind me a bit. Sam had an interview this morning with a guy named Leo Delaney, who's a offensive line recruit that's down, I think, to Michigan. And
No, he's not down yet. But I think
he's not down yet.
No, I think Michigan and Tennessee are the favorites.
The favorites, okay.
Yeah.
But that kid was, I thought, at first I thought Sam was talking to a 30-year-old guy. And he's very impressive kid, to say the least. Well, Nyman, the same thing. So yeah, it looks like Nerato is really doing it. So.
Yeah, I think, you know, we talked about long-term things earlier, like this. This is the result of a long-term commitment by U.S. Hockey to developing players. The NTDP team, the all the way down. Like if you look at like the way that hockey was when I was covering hockey for Michigan Hockey Mag versus what it is today, the amount of commitment from the top down, how much the schools go out and, you know, they're part of every single ice rink has a presence there. They have players coming back and coaching, and they have a commitment that the Canadians have always had to developing players, to having them go to the schools here, and then the universities got involved in that, and now we're seeing, you know, the results of, you know, this last 20 years of commitment to making sure that we have hockey as an important sport in the United States, and it's great for college hockey. It's been great for Michigan, and it's not like it's at the cost of other teams, because I think college hockey itself is just better than it's ever been.
Well, so there's a website called Hockey's Future that has a message board attached to it, and it actually has a fair number of like knowledgeable people, scouts, who post on it very regularly. And what happens every year now is that when the new crop of national team players is being hypothesized there'll be a bunch of Canadians on there who are very angry that dual nationals who were raised in Canada are probably going to be on the national development team. So, I mean, just in terms of like what I couldn't imagine a better scenario for USA Hockey. Like in terms of a home run of an idea, the national team development program is it. So, and I mean, just the turnaround and what the U.S. was doing at the World Juniors is just, and retaining all those players for college. It's made. I mean, the national team is a big draw for everybody, and then those kids almost invariably end up in college, and it's made college hockey a much more attractive development landscape for Canadians, and like the ability to get and retain these guys, I think, is at an all-time high. Like nobody looks down at college hockey as a development path anymore, which has been the case unfairly since Red Berenson.
Well, wasn't Red the very first American player to play in the National Hockey League? I mean, not American, first college player.
He might have been the first college player. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So it definitely has changed. And back when I was in school, if you looked at the Michigan roster, they were mostly Canadian kids.
It's crazy.
That's not true anymore.
It's crazy. That's not an NIL thing, though. That's not.
Well, NIL has changed it a little bit because now you're not starving, and that's the biggest.
I mean, I would guess that these kids are getting something, but probably from agents and stuff more than because I'm just not sure how much money is floating around in this system that the players can have access to. I would be fascinated to know how much it is.
I mean, the UMass guys are sure that Michigan has a baseline.
Is Michigan's development just on another? Michigan specifically, their development just on another level?
Maybe. I mean, right now, what you do have is Brandon Naurato, who was a very respected NHL skills guy before he came to Michigan, right? This is a guy who's working with NHL players all the time. And probably there are a lot of people in the league who are like, yeah, man, this guy develops. So I think that helps. But I just think that Brandon Naurato himself is like a really appealing person to play for.
And he's brought in assistant coaches that are similar. They're basically young guys. They're into new tech and new ways of teaching hockey. I mean, the one guy's got his little computer out on the ice, and as opposed to going back into the locker room and saying XYZ should have happened, they'll stop a practice right now and show them. And so this is what we need to do right here on a tablet.
Yeah, and I think
that's
if you're looking at who you want to play for, you could go play for a crusty old guy in the OHL, or you could play for a team that has a director of analytics, right, and who's really trying to be at the forefront of playing hockey, of developing hockey players, and you get to do it in beautiful Ann Arbor, Michigan. You get to play in Yost Ice Arena, and you don't have to ride around on a bus halfway through Western Canada. There are a lot of things that make college hockey appealing, especially, I feel like it's taken a minute here, but the formation of the Big Ten now gives you a conference where there's a lot of appeal in playing in the Big Ten. Like Michigan State is now recruiting very well. Mm-hmm. And it took them to flip their coach, but they have basically very little recent success, and they are still picking off guys who are like, oh, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good pickup. And, Minnesota's always going to be Minnesota. And, it's interesting what's going to happen with Notre Dame because they're changing coaches this year. So, but historically they've been able to get guys, but then they flip to Michigan or Minnesota because they want to score goals. But it's a really talented league. It's really fun week in and week out. And I think people see that and they want to be in it.
Interesting football segue here to close. I asked you, does Michigan hockey just develop better? I wonder, does Michigan strength and conditioning just develop better? I mean, Jayshawn Barham puts on 15 pounds of muscle in a basically 3 months. And they talk about what a beast he is. And he's been in college for 2 years. We talked to Miles Hinton on Sunday, and he said, He's up to 342 pounds, and he looks slimmer. We saw him. He's like, he looked like he lost weight. He said, no, I'm up to 342. And he said, I finally feel like I have grown man strength. I'm like, this dude's been in college for 3. What do you mean you finally feel like you have grown? It's like, how does that happen? Hey, maybe, and when you look at their body of work, maybe they just develop better.
Well, I think that's,
go ahead.
I think that's obvious at this point, right? Like, there are charts out there of recruiting class ranking versus NFL draft position over the past 3, 4, 5 years, and Michigan's right at the top of those. So I think that it's not speculation. I just think it's facts that under Justin Herbert and hopefully under his successor, Justin Trust, Michigan will continue to outperform based on their ability to develop and also their ability to identify guys who can develop, right?
Yeah, you got to remember that the personality of the player probably has a lot to do with it, but I think the culture of the team and also secret weapon Abigail. Like every time you ask the players what's going on here, they're like, well, we have a nutritionist who's the best of the business, who knows what to put in our bodies in order to do this. But I think it's probably a lot of the team culture. Like you take Jason Barham as an example. At Maryland, he comes in a 5-star or near enough, right? And they tell you go be you, right? You go you go play the way Jason Barham wants to play. When he comes to Michigan, there's a team culture, there's an expectation, there's a level, and this is why he came here, because he wanted to be pushed more. He wanted to feel, and I think that that's probably true in a lot of programs, but I think Michigan's done a very good job, and you got to credit Ben Herbert for this, and you got to credit Jim Harbaugh for this, of creating that team culture where everybody, if you're not doing this, people are going to look at you sideways, right? Yeah. And they look for guys who are going to want to be that way in the first place.
And I just wrote up DJ Turner for the book, which is the last thing I had to do, except one other thing. So I'm done. Hooray. But one of the things I was saying in there is we were on this show and you told us that Ben Herbert fixed DJ Turner's leg. Mm-hmm. And like, that's kind of like he went from a guy who ran a 4.63 as a recruit to a guy who has a top 5 40 time at the combine all time. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's just facts at this point. Like, I don't think you need to even speculate about it. Yeah. Now, can Michigan maintain it? New coach, new strength guy. We'll see. But at this point, they're probably the top team in the country at developing football players.
And so you're Babaloa and you're looking at Miles Hinton. I mean, how hard a choice is this? I don't know, but apparently it is, because most people think he's going to Stanford.
Well, I don't know. I think he's the word he gave this week is he is legitimately torn. Mm-hmm. That's the vibe that he gave back as of what was it, Monday or Tuesday? I know he was still kind of talking. He could have given the word that it was Stanford and he didn't. Yeah. So we'll see. But I think we're in an interesting time. I mean, Kirk Campbell gets a ton of credit for how JJ McCarthy evolved and developed as a quarterback. But, if Alex Orji, if his development goes along the course that they seem to think it's going, because I let me tell you, fellas, I've been doing this long enough to take note of when you get a practice report from a player. Sometimes players say things different from coaches, and someone who goes to practice might say things different than the players or the coaches. But they're all saying, "Hey, Alex Orji's out. Alex Orji is out front. He's the top performing player." So I take that to be the case, that he's out front. Now we got to see it in games. Now we got to see it. Well, first he has to maintain it. He has to maintain it in, for the rest of the fall camp. Then we got to see it in games. And if this dude, if he can just be consistent in the throws you want him to make, like he was ranked number 13 on the freaks list, Brian. He might be underrated that might be underrated. Like, he is an unbelievable. If he could just complete those throws, The other stuff he can really do. He can do the JT Barrett stuff in his sleep if he could just do the short stuff.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see. How will the offense change if they know he's the guy? And how much do you run him? How much? Because Michigan really wanted to protect JJ McCarthy, and they did. And the two things about Alex Orji is, one, he's a tank, so you don't have to protect him as much, and two, it probably doesn't work if you protect him as much. Because Michigan could get away with having JJ McCarthy's legs as a special treat, but Alex Orji, it's like his throwing is, at least this year, is probably not going to be the level where you're going to be competing for championships if he's running twice a game. So that's a tricky balancing act, and also you gotta commit if you're going to have a quarterback run game, because if you're not reading it live, that really takes a lot out of what you're able to do.
Here's the one of the things that is, and I see Miz is wrapping me up. He is so analytical. Like, he is a super bright kid. Like, he's a guy who wants to not just be the runner. Like, if you try to make him be that, I think it might mess with him if you try to just make him be a runner.
Well, no, that's not what I'm saying, but he can't. He's got to be a guy who carries it like 8 to 10 times a game, probably, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we had Denard Robinson here, and we had Devin Gardner here, and you saw what happened when they stopped letting him run. They stopped making the running game part of his repertoire. He just got lit up all the time. So I mean, that it just has to be enough that the defensive ends can't pin their ears back and come at you.
Yep. All right. Great roundtable as always. We got to get out of here. Fellas, you're the best. I won't be here next week, so it'll be the roundtable with Ira and Miz. I appreciate you, fellas. You are my guys. I love you. I love the roundtable. Keep doing what you do. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks. To the rest of you, I'll see you tomorrow here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTK The Ticket, the official voice of University of Michigan Sports, Ann Arbor, a Cumulus station.